Hello everyone. Today we'll talk about WearPG, which is a tabletop role-playing game that incorporates variables and movement. And today we'll talk about its design process and some design guidelines that are extracted from this process. And now I'm starting with, for people who doesn't know what a tabletop role-playing game is, here is a little example for you.
Still theoretically corner case, but at the same time.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to smack him in the face with my mace. I know I should do that in the box, but that is going to be a 19 versus AC.
That hits.
Alright.
Do 8 damage.
Or what do you do? I do 8 damage.
I'm hitting them with my mace. In the face.
Oh, in the face.
Face of the
Okay.
face.
Alright, so how much damage? 8 damage. Okay. So taking that blow, as it creeps down onto your shoulders, you lift him up and crack him on the side of the
That's adorable.
Wow. And he flings himself down on the ground.
So this is a little footage from a role-playing game session. And basically in role-playing games, there's a table, of course, because it's a tabletop role-playing game. There are some people who sit around it, and there's one game master who tells the story, and there are other players who react to that story. And the outcomes of their reactions usually are determined by the values on a dice or randomizer. This can be cards too, but dice are actually more common to use. And there can be also other supportive elements such as character sheets, boards, and grids. And if we ask, what about WearPG? So how did we incorporate movement and variables in that kind of game? Here's how it works actually. So in WearPG, instead of rolling the dice immediately, players play a movement-based game first, and their success in that movement-based game affects the outcome of the dice. So if you're more successful in the movement-based game, then you have a better probability of getting a successful outcome from the dice. Then you will roll the dice. So in this game, there are 7 different movement-based games that can be adapted to different kind of scenarios. For example, if a player wants to hit something, then he or she can play the power game. Or if they want to focus on something according to the scenario, then they can maybe play the concentration game that you're seeing here. So when I come up with this game, this is actually my PhD project, and Stefan Buruk was in my dissertation committee. He asked me, why are you doing this? So, so here's the reason. Actually, we wanted to incorporate variables. This is the elemental gauntlet that are used in the game, and this is the luck stone. We wanted to incorporate variables because we thought that it will create a costume effect. Meaning, if you carry a custom piece of your character on your body, then you will connect your character more and to the fictional world more. And if we can encourage players to bodily enact their characters instead of just verbally, then maybe we can still engage them more with the game, and we can make them feel as if their character is much more than a previous one. So here is actually a little example from WearPG. Here our participant plays a precision game to hit this imaginary creature wandering around somewhere. And purple means epic success. She got a yellow in the dice. It is still a success. And the GM actually continues to tell the story according to the outcome from that dice. So this is basically WearPG, and today we will talk about how did we design it, what was the design process, and what lessons learned out of it. So the research process started with a participatory design workshop. And after that workshop, we got some design implications that affected the concept and the low fidelity prototypes of it. So we created a low fidelity prototypes to not spend too much time before making sure that players will somehow like it. Then we tested low fidelity prototypes with players. We got another set of design implications, but this time it was more about game design. Then we developed the high fidelity prototype. Then we made some summative user evaluations with that prototype. We got some design teams out of it, and at the end, by combining all of these implications, our experience and feedback from users, we created the design guidelines for implementing variables and movement in narrative-based long-term games. So let's start with the participatory design workshop. At the participatory design workshop, it was participated by players, game masters, cosplayers, jewelry designers, and interaction designers. So there were 5 people from each audience, and there were totally 25 participants. This workshop lasted for 2 days, and we ideated about how to use wearables in tabletop role-playing games. We discussed on them, and then we actually created some visual prototypes. At the end, there was 5 conceptual prototypes that we can analyze. And after analyzing them, and also analyzing the feedback from users, we came up with some game design implications. Not game design, but overall design implications about the system. So you can see it more in detail from the paper, but I will just mention some of them, which I believe important. The first design implication was about dice. In the beginning of that project, because we're actually implementing a completely new system, we were thinking about removing the dice and implementing only movement-based gameplay. But in the workshop, we saw that dice is like treasure for gamers, and it is a very important part of the tangible experience. So design implication was, do not remove the dice. Of course, it has a more scientific explanation in the paper, but here I believe this is the lesson that I got from this feedback. So the other thing was about distraction. I will skip this before I hurt someone, but we also shouldn't distract the players, because if you're implementing the technology into an analog game, there is always this danger that you can distract player out of the game. And in tabletop role-playing games, it is very important that people should socially interact with each other. The attention of them should be on each other and the game master. So these two are, I believe, really important implications from this first workshop. And then we go to the low fidelity prototype phase. So we created the concept first, we ideated a lot. Then we created our movement-based games theoretically. Then this is the first version of the Luckstone that you have seen. It's basically a Sphero. I don't know if you know what it is. It's a great tool for tangible implementation. And we printed a 3D printed a shell that looks like a dice, around it. And this was the first prototype of elemental gauntlet, which was a more of elemental sponge actually. So we wanted to incorporate it to see how it just really feels to wear something. There was no interaction, but we wanted to understand this. But with Sphero, we were kind of successful to implement some of the movement-based games, and the ones that we couldn't implement, we tested with Wizard of Oz method. So this version of the game is tested by 15 participants in 3 different contexts, and we got also some game design implications out of it. One important one is, if I'm a weak player, like I'm not that strong, but I want to role-play a barbarian character. What if I cannot swing my arm as strong as this giant barbarian? So from this we understand that movements should adapt to different kind of player types, different kind of characters. And the other game design implication was about repetition. In this photo, repetition seems very pleasant, but in tabletop role-playing games it is not. So we also have to reduce repetitions when players was playing their movement-based gameplays. So another thing was there was a problem because there was no interaction with the sponge, so we couldn't understand if these variables will work in the intended way. So we want to go to the implementation phase. Of course, this was a problem, and we created another concept to solve this problem. It's an advertisement for my poster tomorrow. Come see it. It's about implementing variables, smart variables for designers. But this was a problem, and we also inspired to solve it in a different way. So this was a low fidelity prototype phase, and after we went with the development of the high fidelity prototype, I don't know how high fidelity is that, but it is more higher than the previous one actually. So this is the elemental gauntlet, last state, and as you see, it has ambient feedback, and haptic feedback, and it actually provides embodied interaction. So this is designed with this implication in mind. We shouldn't distract the player. So there is no screens on that. There is no detailed information. So players will distract from the game and actually stuck with that information. All of the interaction design is designed around not to distract the player. And of course, we created the lock stone. This was because we shouldn't remove the dice, as I just said. But I mean, just taking the conventional dice and putting into game wouldn't be a designerly approach, and most probably some cheesy game mechanics will come out of it. So we created chance manipulation, and it is directly related with our variable prototypes. And of course, there's a GM console here. What is important is that difficulty system that you can see here. So difficulty system is that each game has 5 different difficulties. So if you're a weak player, but you want to desperately roleplay a giant barbarian, then you will get that easiest power minigame each time. And whatever your physical skills are, most probably you will be successful in that game because your giant barbarian character is super strong. So this is how we try to solve that. And we also want to design adaptable games. For example, this is the concentration game. And this guy here is playing with just rolling it in the palm. And while this guy played the exact same game with more embodied performative interaction. So we wanted to design games that can adapt to different kind of narratives and different kind of desires of the players. Of course, we tested our prototype with 24 participants. They played the scenario with no devices. Then we made them fill a questionnaire. Then they played the other half of the game with variables and movement. We also made them fill another questionnaire, and we actually conducted some in-depth, semi-structured interviews with each user. So we actually made our analysis over variables and movement. So we saw that, players expressed that actually using variables increased their immersion feeling, and actually they added their relationship with their character. And so similarly, movement is also already proved that it adds to engagement, but it wasn't tested in that kind of imaginary context. So we also see that it still works in that context too, and it adds to character relationship. Our questionnaire results also supports that qualitative data. We just made that questionnaire to understand if qualitative data has some realness. And we get some design teams. I will skip these design teams for here. You can see them in the paper, because in design guidelines we mention all of them in a more holistic way. So the first one, materialization. The second one was about the placement of the moment-based games. And for design guidelines, we have 6 design guidelines that will inform not only variables, but all kind of hybrid games and usage of variables and movement in narrative-based long-term games. So this one is, I believe, very important, creating hybrid game mechanics. So if you design a hybrid game, you should put attention that game mechanics should be also hybrid. So most of the tabletop games, you can see tabletop augmented games, you can see that they're just augmenting the pawns, they're just augmenting the tokens, and they're not so much addition to game mechanics. Here in the Lockstone, it has digital properties that you can manipulate with chance, but its physical properties also adds to the game mechanics, and I believe this is very important for designing meaningful hybrid games. Limiting the interaction with peripherals is an interesting choice for us. So players cannot interact with their devices all the time. They can only interact when GM allows to do so. And I believe this is also important, so players will not distracted from the game, and they will be always interacted with each other. Leading to word watching moments. So when players play the moment-based game, the other players that doesn't play the game always watch that player. And they also expressed that it was enjoyable. And they said that in some of the role-playing games, when the turn is the other player, they are just get bored and do not interest in the game. So if you can lead to word watching moments in the game, this will also increase the engagement between players. We should form imaginary performances, so our editions should actually make players to feel as if they're also performing these things in the imaginary world. For example, one of our players said that I really felt as if I'm casting a spell. And your tangible things should connect all of the things to your game. Your wearable devices shouldn't be out of the game, or your dice shouldn't be out of the game. All of this connection should somehow be related from the mechanics to make them all meaningful for the game. And electronics are complex. You should be very careful if you're augmenting a game. By accident, you can add new uncaptivating moments. You shouldn't do that. You should be very careful while adding new electronics into an analog game. So this is my presentation. Thank you for being here and listening to it, and I will be glad to take your questions.
Questions?
Hi there, Josh Miller from Northeastern University. Very wonderful talk.
Thank you.
With respect to the player experience, did you find that having luck is conflicting with their performance? Like if I'm a player and I try very hard to have a very engaging performance and act it out a lot, but then I have poor luck when I roll, is there some conflict, some cognitive dissonance there?
Actually, I mean, definitely there is, and it is very important to actually, determine how, for example, if they're super successful in a moment-based game, how should we alter their luck so they will be unsuccessful? If you lower this case, unsuccessfulness actually turn into enjoyment because it's so impossible. But if you can find it, I mean, you're super unlucky and everyone is making joy. But if you cannot alter this in a very good way, this would create disappointment as you just expressed it. Thank you for that question. It's great for game design.
Hi, Sarah from UC Berkeley. Thank you for the really cool talk. I was curious whether you've looked at using wearables to support interactions between players rather than between the player and the GM. Because it seems like this is mostly an isolated moment for a single character that's fun for other players to watch but not engage with.
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Whether you thought at all or what you saw as using the wearables to support interactions between two different players as they either role-play their characters or collaborate on achieving a challenge. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, there's a recent paper from Florian Müller who explored the space of bodily exertion, social exertion, and that's a very good question. In our game, it's all turn-based, and players are playing their games in their turns. But there's still a very good opportunity. How could we use it? If we can collaborate them with each other in the same time, if we can synchronize their movements, and if this would increase empathy or social interaction between players, or how would it be if we also can provide some design space that bodies of these players will engage with each other. So this is a very good question, and this is kind of a future work for me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very quick question.
Okay, super fast. In like normal role-playing games, the probabilities are sometimes not always obvious, but they kind of are with the luck stone, right? Because the sides change colors. Did you get any data about sort of how that changes the experience, or to be able to like pick up this object and know like, well, like it's all red, like I've got just barely a chance to succeed, versus I'm gonna roll a d20, I don't know what the difficulty class is, right?
Like in the game design wise, most of the players actually find it so positive that they can affect their chances and they have some little manipulation chance. In the embodied interaction side, they always look at the dice before rolling it instead of just